Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the first edition of the On the Pony Express podcast of 2023. Thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing to us at On 3. We are now into year 2 of being at On 3. It's been a heck of a year, my favorite year covering SMU pretty much throughout my time as a student and now as a journalist covering the team. Had a coaching change in basketball. We had a coaching search to cover in that regard. We've had the full first year of Rhett Lashley at the helm of the Mustangs, and they went bowling. So we've had NIL, we've had transfer portal, we've got a lot of things to cover, and it's been the best because I've been at On 3, being able to do that and really prioritize the stuff that you guys want to read about, which is for the most part transfer scoop, recruiting scoop, team scoop, all of those good things. And hopefully in 2023, we get even better. I know we will. And a large part of that will be this podcast as well. I'm really hoping to blow this thing out of the water in 2023 for you guys, really start doing some things with guests, maybe doing some live shows, and getting you guys more involved, the listeners. So appreciate all of you guys who have subscribed to On the Pony Express in our first year. Appreciate you guys who have been there from the beginning, those who joined us in the middle, and those who will join us in the years to come at On 3. So thank you guys for jumping on board. You can subscribe now to the site at ontheponyexpress.com, $10 a month. Let's jump in here. Since we last spoke, we were going into the new year. SMU had a lot of key transfers set to visit campus, and also some targets that were nearing decisions. And now we have 3 new transfer commitments to talk about for SMU football. SMU basketball is cratering right now, so we're going to spend the large part of this podcast talking about football and kind of what's next, because this is move-in weekend as well for these guys. So we're seeing the early enrollees come to campus for the high school side of things, as well as pretty much all the mid-year guys from the transfer portal will be here. So a lot to get to on this podcast. I do want to work from the oldest news and get to the newest news. So we'll work in that order. And we lead off with a huge position of need still is the corner and safety department. Well, SMU added Chris Megginson to the transfer list. He committed to the Mustangs on January 7th. He had offers from Kansas, Cincinnati, Indiana, Wake Forest, and plenty of others. 2022, he notched 33 tackles, 6 pass breakups, and a forced fumble. He had 21 tackles, a tackle for loss, and 5 pass breakups when Scott Simons was at the helm of his defense in 2021. In 2020, he broke out as a key player for Simons, 30 tackles, a pick, and a pass breakup in 11 games. So he's played a lot of football at Liberty. He's somebody that steps right in and will be somebody that I think you can count on in a big way if you're SMU. I mean, he's somebody that has been silently committed for quite some time and now is headed to SMU. I think he's going to bring more size to that cornerback room. I think there's a chance he could play elsewhere in the secondary, but I do feel like with Chris Megginson now on board, he can really challenge, along with Charles Woods, anyone in the secondary to be that starting corner. You look at what SMU is going to bring back with guys like Jahari Rogers, Kavaris Hall, Bryce McMorris in the secondary, AJ Davis, who played a little bit down the stretch. How that corner room works out is going to be very, very interesting because SMU has brought in so much talent at the corner position. They're not done. And I feel like this is a position where now that you have a guy like Charles Woods, now that you have a guy like Chris Megginson back there at the corner position, this whole room it's night and day. It really, really is. They've added their third Liberty Flame with Rocket Rahimi committing. We'll get to him in a second. He's a big pickup for the safety room. But with Chris Megginson, he's another corner that brings size on the outside. Charles Woods is very similar in that respect. They need to get bigger. They need to get tougher. And I think they've done that. They've still got a couple targets out there still in the secondary. And we'll touch on those. We'll touch on another that went elsewhere. But, this is now a room that when Scott Simon spoke with us early on. He said, I want to be able to rotate four guys, have a true two deep where there's no drop off. And at times this past year, there was certainly a drop off. We know the secondary got a little bit better. They had shown that they were able to improve, and it was just consistently just not good enough. But there were times where you said, okay, this room has learned what they're trying to teach, what they're trying to accomplish. You saw AJ Davis get developed enough to play down the stretch. You saw Sam Westfall kind of take some steps forward. It wasn't great. I'm not trying to say that, but now this is a room that you sit there and say, okay, you've got Charles Woods, you have Chris Megginson. Those are probably your 1 and 2 guys. Those are your starters, but you also have Jahari Rogers. You also have AJ Davis coming up. Kavaris Hall is still in the mix there. Those are players that can still contribute at the corner position. And who knows, maybe they add another. We dropped some notes at ontheponyexpress.com about who is still out there, who could still get into the mix at the corner position for SMU. So go ahead, check that out. One name before we get to Rocket Rahimi committing to SMU, Kobe Minor was somebody that we broke on the site that he was on campus for a visit, the Texas Tech transfer from Lake Dallas. And I think he was one where twofold here. He ends up going Big Ten and going to Indiana. So, I mean, kudos to him. He gets to play in the Big Ten. But with Rocket Rahimi jumping on board, they wanted to get somebody with his ability. And there was a chance, and we'll kind of give you some of the backstory here on Rocket. But there was a chance that Rocket Rahimi was not going to end up at SMU. And he was certainly somebody that had plenty of interest. He had Arizona State, Kansas State, and West Virginia offers. And Kansas State really made it difficult on SMU. I can tell you that much. Rocket Rahimi, 6'1", 190 safety that comes to campus now after notching five interceptions for the Flames in 2022. He had 56 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss, and a fumble recovery as well. He is coming for his final year of eligibility, so he's a 1-year fix. Kobe Minor, the Texas Tech transfer safety, would have been a multi-year guy, but hadn't really played, hadn't really broken through, had done some good things here or there for the Red Raiders, but it just wasn't enough to really break through. Well, SMU, I can tell you what, did a terrific job recruiting Rocket Rahimi. He's a California guy. Ricky Hunley recruited him out of Mission Viejo all the way back before he went to Saddleback Community College for 2 years before joining Liberty in 2021. So he's a super COVID kid, basically, that's coming to SMU. Those relationships panned out, but I will say this, and I've said this for a while now, the NIL collective, especially Pony Sports DTX, is playing a massive role here for SMU. They're doing a terrific job. They're, quite frankly, just putting SMU on, I would say, very equal footing for a lot of Power 5 programs that SMU should be competing with on a regular basis for prospects and players. And this year, this cycle of transfers is a prime example. And Rocket was a guy that, it was kind of a battle for. When you look at the safety room for SMU, they have Ahmad Moses, who's an up-and-coming guy who looks like he's going to be a great safety for SMU, in my opinion. Brian Massey, you got to get more out of. Brandon Crosley's your nickel, so a little different there. And they have added, Rocket Rahimi now to this mix, as well as Jonathan McGill. And those two guys right there are ones that I would kind of say, those are your starters. Those are the ones that you've got to circle. And we haven't even talked about CJ Sanders, the Fresno State defensive back, because he's somebody that is probably going to be either corner, maybe nickel, maybe safety. He can probably play all over. He's told the SMU coaches, just get me on the field. That's where he wants to play, which I think is awesome and says a lot about what they're getting in the New Caney, Texas native when he gets to campus. But Rocket really solidifies this room. We saw what Nick Roberts could do as far as a veteran safety coming in and providing a sense of juice, physicality. And I think Rocket does that for the safety room. And it helps continue to lead guys like Ahmad Moses, someone who's still very young, and as well as Brian Massey, coming off a tough year. Rocket has been through it all. He had to go JUCO. He played through a coaching change. He's had his ups, had his downs, but he's coming off a great year. Somebody that knows Scott Simon's defense that can really kind of set the tone for this group. And they still have Brandon Crosley in there in that nickel role as well, who's going to be battling. So this secondary is just off the wall, night and day different than what the group was when we ended the season. There are a lot of new names in there, and there are a lot of guys that are also returning that are ready to battle for playing time too, and kind of that next step. Kavaris Hall wants to bounce back here. AJ Davis wants to continue to improve. Ahmad Moses, same story. There are pieces now to this secondary that you kind of look around and, at least on paper, you say, wow, this is different. This is a group that they can really compete with. You saw what Nick Roberts brought in. I think he was the most proven. He was the one that made a ton of sense. Kavaris Hall came in and nicked up here or there, but also was kind of trying to get in the groove of things. And I think he kind of struggled to find his way this year. We'll see if he can break through, but he's certainly got some size to him, and he's got some nasty to him. It just didn't work out too well for him this year. Bryce McMorris comes back into the fold. Will be interesting to see where he plays. I bet you he's somebody that can move around. But when you go back and you look at the transfers that they brought in at the secondary last year, we're talking about Nick Roberts. We're talking about Chris Adamora, who big safety. I mean, he is huge. He's hulking back there. I'm not so sure that was, in the end, probably a great fit. Will he get a chance to shine and maybe make a move to another position even when you look at it in this upcoming season? That would be something to watch in the spring if we're kind of looking ahead just a little bit there. They brought in Kavaris Hall, like I mentioned. You look at who they brought in this cycle, all proven. I mean, you've got a captain at Stanford. You've got a 2-year starter in CJ Sanders at Fresno State. You have starters in Rocket Rahimi and Chris Megginson, both who've gotten it done in the defense that you're teaching and you're coaching. And Charles Woods, when healthy, is a very, very good defensive back who's a preseason All Big 12 selection. So it's night and day between what they're bringing in and what they brought in last year in the secondary. I think SMU secondary is poised to take a big step up. The pass rush needs to continue to improve and get better. They have some pieces there that suggest that can happen. But the biggest reason why the pass rush will get better is SMU's commitment to adding on the back end in the secondary high quality transfers. My guess is they're not done, but this secondary haul is about as good as you're going to see in the country when it comes to looking around and trying to find teams that have truly reshaped their secondary. Honestly, LSU comes to mind. They've gotten some better talent here and there in terms of top end guys, but when you look around the country, SMU has done it really, really well with some players that were highly sought after as well. So kudos to the entire staff on what they brought in to the secondary. Now, SMU did bring in this latest transfer, and this is one of those commitments that you'll probably remember if you're an SMU fan. Down the line, it's going to be either for good or bad because he's a boom or bust guy, in my opinion. But Texas A&M offensive line transfer P.J. Williams committed to SMU. His counsel, Kobe DeBose of DeBose Defense, confirmed in a statement the top 100 prospect in the 2022 recruiting class has plenty of upside. We've talked about him a lot on the podcast. Now he's committed to SMU. He's in a diversion program, which if he follows all those steps over however long the program is, the police department will not file charges against him for an arrest relating to a marijuana possession charge back in, I believe, October. And I think this is a great win for PJ Williams. This is, I think, a situation where you obviously made a mistake, what could have been a huge mistake if you let it. And if he keeps his nose clean and does all the things he needs to do, he's going to show that it was a mistake and he was young and made that mistake. He's done a lot of things already. in terms of what they want him to do in that diversion program. And it's just beginning. So the Brazos County District Attorney's Office agreed to it with DuBose and PJ Williams and everyone involved with him. He'll have to do some things in the community. He'll have to, continue to just do the right things off the field, especially to be able to have this opportunity at SMU. I expect him to enroll in the spring at SMU at this point. This was the big hurdle that SMU was kind of waiting for when it came to PJ Williams. And now they get a chance to have him on campus. And when you look at what they're bringing in PJ Williams, I don't think SMU's had a guy like him on the offensive line, just from a pure prospect perspective. 7-foot wingspan, really impressive combine scores when he was coming out of high school. He's from Dickinson, a really good producer of talent, especially as of late. He's lean, but he has shown the ability that he's going to add on plenty of mass to that upper body. He did that prior to his senior year, gaining 20 to 30 pounds. I think he's somebody that, even though he redshirted at Texas A&M, he's somebody that I think when he figures it out, and I think he's trending in the right way, he's somebody that if he doesn't start this year for SMU, and Hiron White's going to have a lot to say about that, the Missouri offensive line transfer at right tackle, he's going to be starting next year, and he's going to be starting for the next 2 years, maybe 3, and he's going to be headed off to have a nice pro career if he does all the things he needs to. This is a massive, massive land for SMU. He's somebody that is oozing with potential. He had a bad freshman year experience at College Station. Didn't go well, more so off the field. But this is a massive pickup. They beat out Colorado. They beat out hometown Houston. And for those on the board, as we were watching this, wondering where SMU sat with PJ Williams, I was told that he had his grant aid form signed weeks ago. So he's been signed. SMU and the SMU still hasn't announced him as a part of their class for what it's worth. But they did not want to announce him and then him not be able to go, or the diversion program didn't work out. So just from picking up a few things I'd heard on my end of things, he's somebody that wanted to be at SMU. So took that official visit to SMU, ends up taking one to Colorado to check out what Deion Sanders had to say, goes to Houston with some buddies and checks out the Cougs, and then announces his commitment through his attorney. And I think that's the right, it's kind of weird. It's different. But I will say this, it doesn't get you any, backlash on his own social media. He's been doing all the right things. So, and it's been pretty positive. It's been, a couple of people say, wow, an attorney. But then you have a ton of people who are saying, go PJ, come on, get it done. I saw a couple of his teammates quote tweeted my tweet about it. So a huge deal for SMU to get PJ Williams. You get PJ Williams on board. Again, if he doesn't start this year, which he has the talent to, he has the pure talent to, but if he doesn't start this year, he could very well start next. He'll play a lot this year, I think. He'll be in that rotation, especially at tackle. He'll probably be the third tackle, is my guess, behind Hiron White and Marcus Bryant. Owen Condon is out the door. Joe Bissinger is out the door. I do think PJ could play a little inside if he gets that much bigger. But SMU is just getting a kind of one of those freaky athletes into the fold now as a part of its transfer haul. So those are the 3 transfer additions to SMU, huge ones, all at positions that you always want to upgrade if you're any college out there. So kudos to the staff for getting those done. It wasn't all peachy for SMU, as we did see a couple, one major target really stuck out to me. He went another direction, and that was Jake Roberts, the North Texas transfer who is headed to play at Baylor. This one was a bit of a surprise. Arkansas, SMU, and Baylor were all battling for him. That was the order of the visits as well. And I would say, this is a big deal for SMU to get into that Final 3. But I would just say this one caught them by surprise. I think a little bit. There was a lot of positivity coming off of his visit to SMU. It was a huge position of need. They've done extremely well to get tight ends into the league as of late, and Rhett Lashley has been a part of that. It's not just when Sonny Dykes was here; it was when Rhett Lashley was here. They have a long run, and now you look at what they've you know got. They've got R.J. Maryland, who is terrific. They have Trip Reardon and Lonnie Johnson coming in as true freshmen. Gage Haskin just entered the transfer portal. And they need, a Cam Allen, a Nolan Matthews Harris, maybe a Simon Gonzalez to step up. There's not much left that's there. So this is a big position of need. This is one of those that really hurts. I think just in terms of how much versatility there could be with Rhett Lashley's offense, to have a second tight end that you could truly rely upon, like Ben Redding emerged as in this 2022 season. They had RJ Maryland. He was awesome, but they need somebody that can play just a little bit more on the end line and be a responsible blocker. And that's just kind of the tough part of it. And breaking news into the podcast, Jaelyn Davis-Robinson has committed to SMU. There it is. We've been waiting on that one. I just saw it. I just got a text, and I was wondering what is going on, and that is it. So 1 second here, guys, as I publish this article. SMU getting Jaelyn Davis-Robinson, the LSU cornerback, into the fold right now, live on the podcast. Who knows? We might be posting this podcast within a few minutes after this news is out there. What a big pickup for SMU. Jaelyn Davis-Robinson, the LSU cornerback, entered the portal after his freshman season in Baton Rouge. He was somebody that Brian Kelly talked up a lot. He is now headed to SMU. The Waxahachie, Texas native is one of the fastest guys in, quite honestly, the country. He holds the record for, I believe, the 100 or the 200 meter at Waxahachie. One of the guys on that list right behind him, former SMU wide receiver Aldrick Robinson. This is a huge pickup for the Mustangs. I will say Scott Simons, Keenan Hall, Ricky Hunley, all these guys had a huge part in Smoke ending up at SMU. This is a big pickup. I mean, he's one of the fastest guys out there, and this is one of those pickups that really just completely changes again the secondary. And I'm just trying to put this article up online, so give me one moment here. But this is a big piece of news coming into the podcast right now. He was in Baton Rouge for just 1 year. But he was talked up by Brian Kelly multiple times this year. And I think this is somebody that really will bring a lot long-term to SMU. So when you look at Jaelyn Davis-Robinson, now that that's all out there, this is a big one. This is I'm as high on this pickup for SMU as anyone. Okay. Let's just restart that, guys. Jaelyn Davis-Robinson, LSU transfer defensive back, jumps on board with the Mustangs here. This is huge. Let me take you guys back to him as a recruit. Jaelyn Davis-Robinson, somebody that I think late in the recruiting process really blew up, and Oregon came in and LSU came in, and people were wondering, where was he going to go? Was he going to end up going all the way to Oregon, or was he going to end up just a little bit closer to home and play for the Tigers? Play what is really from Waxahachie probably 7 hours away. So I mean, this is a massive, massive pickup for the Mustangs. They get somebody that has verified speed that you can't really touch anywhere nationally. He is one of the fastest players uh, right away on SMU's team, if not the fastest. Again, clocking in that 10.5 100-meter time, 21.43 200-meter. He holds the record at Waxahachie in one of those categories. And I'll say this, when he committed to LSU, he went about it the right way. Oregon really, really, really thought they were going to get him. But he and his family are just so awesome. Really, really good people. I know that it was a tough decision for him, but when he went down to Baton Rouge, I think he got a little homesick. And now they're able to, come back somewhere closer to home, get a fresh start, get a new opportunity. And I think that's going to pay dividends for him. I think he's somebody that after redshirting as a freshman at LSU, he played in 2 games, but he was somebody that was on the up. Brian Kelly talked him up in a big way multiple times this season, including right before the bowl game. He said when you're looking at guys who will benefit from being able to play in the bowl without hurting their eligibility, that's one of the guys that he mentioned was Jaelyn Davis-Robinson. So a former, I think he was just on the verge of being a 4-star. He comes into the fold for SMU here, and it is somebody who's going to play a lot. I think when you look at what he brings, he could play safety, he could play nickel, he could play corner, he could play all over because he has that speed. So now we talked about earlier in the podcast, Jaelyn Davis-Robinson, or we talked about earlier in the podcast, Rocket Rahimi and Chris Megginson. Now I think you get what is probably the final piece of the puzzle in Jaelyn Davis-Robinson, former Waxahachie standout. Scott Simons had a great relationship, has a great relationship with his high school coach over there. And I think this is just one that made a ton of sense. Being able to come back home and get a fresh start. I think this is a great fit for Jalen and his family. Being able to get to a place where your whole family can come and watch you play the rest of your college ball. So Jaelyn Davis-Robinson, a huge pickup for SMU here. They get him on board, and I think he's going to factor in right away. And look, he's got all 4 years to be able to develop and take that coaching from Ricky Hunley and wherever he plays in the secondary. That's what he's going to be able to do. And now that they have him on board, they'll bring him in the spring with the rest of the guys. And that's critical. That's critical that he's going to get that time. He ended up, I think, being somebody that wanted to get back home, and it just makes a ton of sense. So breaking news in the podcast, Jaelyn Davis-Robinson, I know I butchered a lot of it, but he is committed to SMU. And the Mustangs now, I'm going to see if the transfer portal rankings will update. They have not yet. They have not yet, but SMU sits right now number 2 in the transfer portal rankings. And when Jaelyn Davis-Robinson gets added in there officially, he'll be, I think somebody that'll ultimately move them up in that transfer ranking. So, look, this is big news. So, enough Jaelyn Davis-Robinson talk, really. I mean, he played in a couple games as a true freshman at LSU. He was redshirting. They had tons of veteran corners in the room, but he was talked up at length by Brian Kelly. This is a big, big pickup for the Mustangs. So the future is bright for SMU in the secondary. And Jaelyn Davis-Robinson is a big piece of that. So congratulations to him on coming back home, and always enjoyed covering him when he was at LSU too. I mean, he was awesome. Really enjoyed getting to chat with him. So SMU now has, I believe, 14 transfer commitments to this class, not counting Josh Leff, the punter. Haven't confirmed that he's a walk-on or a scholarship guy yet, but he was the 14th transfer in the class for SMU. So the secondary continues to be revamped. The latest name is now on board. What's next for SMU? Classes start this week. All of these guys are going to be on campus and enrolled in school. They're still going to go after some more defensive linemen and defensive ends, trying to get that pass rush. They're going to look for an offensive lineman. We've talked about Stanford offensive lineman Drake Metcalf. I still think he's a strong possibility to get into the boat. And then with Jake Roberts committing to Baylor, you now have Kane Barong from Notre Dame, the former four-star, is the only tight end they've offered who's still out there. Arkansas is heavily in the mix. A couple other programs. They'll try to get him in for a last-minute visit before classes start and see if they can't land him. But, he has not visited yet to my knowledge. So that's kind of where things stand. They still need a big wide receiver. They still got to see if they can get one in the boat at some point. Keyshawn Smith's very good, but they need an outside guy as well. And look, I mean, looking down the rest of the list, another linebacker. But what they've done in the transfer portal, pretty much every single one of these guys, Jaelyn Davis-Robinson is the first one, I think, that has truly redshirted, well, outside of PJ Williams, is truly redshirted and doesn't pop off as a former top 100 guy. What Jaelyn Davis-Robinson pops off with is that 100-meter time and his size. He's ready to play for SMU now. So a huge run of transfers for SMU. Fourth one in the new year for the Mustangs. So things continue to look bright for Rhett Lashley and his staff. What they're doing with the transfer portal is just unbelievable. So kudos to them. They've done a great job. Look, guys, I wanted to get you this podcast. I wanted to kind of recap some things on the transfer front. Friday, I'm going to get in and kind of start taking a look at some storylines to watch as we get into the spring. Start breaking down positions. I haven't decided which position I'm going to start with yet, but we're going to start doing some of those podcasts as well. We're going to get back to the mailbag. We're going to do a live show at some point. We got a lot of things to come in 2023. So be sure to hit that subscribe button to ontheponyexpress.com. Hit that subscribe button to our YouTube channel. Our first, I think, breaking news live on the podcast, Jalen Davis-Robinson commits. We covered Chris Megginson, covered Rocket Rahimi, PJ Williams, and also a little bit on what's next for the Mustangs. So hope you guys enjoyed this edition of the podcast. Sorry it was a little choppy in the middle there with Jalen jumping on board, but big news there as he jumps into the fold. Appreciate all you guys who have subscribed to the site. Thank you guys for listening. I will catch you guys with another edition of the podcast on Friday. Hope you guys are enjoying all the content on the signings that SMU has added as well on the site. And we'll keep it going, guys. Happy 2023, and thanks for listening.